All right. Well, greetings, friends. My name is Anthony Smith, and I'm the Associate Deputy Director for Discretionary Library Grants at IMLS, or the Institute of Museum and Library Services. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar session on the FCC's new rule change to its E-rate program. But before we get started, I would like to take just a moment to acknowledge and honor the people who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for making time to be with us today to hear about the recent rule changes that will make it easier for tribal libraries to obtain funding for broadband services. Those of us at IMLS are really excited about this change and the positive impact it will have on tribal libraries and their ability to expand their reach to tribal communities. So on behalf of IMLS, I'd like to thank our wonderful colleagues at ATOM and the FCC for hosting this informational session today. ATOM has been an important partner for IMLS over the years, and we do appreciate the work they continue to do in support of tribal libraries, archives, and museums. In case you're not aware, you'll probably want to take a look at their report titled Digital Inclusion in Native Communities, the Role of Tribal Libraries, which is a project funded by IMLS a few years ago. I should also mention the Toward Gigabit Libraries Toolkit and Broadband Improvement Plan, which is an Internet 2 initiative also funded by IMLS. It's really designed to help libraries learn about their broadband infrastructure and how to make improvements. I'm going to put both of those links to those resources in the chat in just a minute, so you'll have easy access to those. I'd also like to acknowledge our General Counsel, Nancy Wise, who has championed library broadband expansion for a number of years. And I know she sees this as a major victory for tribal libraries. So thank you, Nancy. Okay, so I'd now like to turn this over to Sue McNeil, who is the Associate Bureau Chief in the Wireline Competition Bureau at the FCC.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you, Susan and ATOM, for hosting this briefing session today. We are so excited to be partnering with you, the American Library Association, and others to help spread the word about our E-rate program and the opportunities for tribal libraries to participate. We are also so grateful to be working with our federal partner, IMLS, and this is just a wonderful opportunity, and we cannot thank you enough. So before I turn it over to Kate Dumichel to provide the briefing, I wanted to introduce some of the folks from the FCC that have joined us here today. So first is Janae Schreiber. She is the Deputy Chief of our Telecommunications Access and Policy Division, and she oversees the ongoing work related to E-rate. Molly O'Connor, who is an attorney on that team, is also here today. And we also have several folks from our Office of Native Affairs and Policy, including the Chief, Matthew Deschanez, and I'm hoping I didn't miss anyone here, Lloyd Collier and Derek Goetson. So we appreciate their joining us as well. And then finally, I wanted to say thank you to Cranell Alfred, who is the tribal liaison at USAC, and we work quite a bit with her on these issues as well. So let me turn it over now to Kate Dumichel. She is a special counsel that works in Janae's group, and she has exercised just a tremendous amount of leadership on this issue. So Kate, take it away.
Thanks, Sue. Give me 1 second to get my screen shared. Can folks see that? I'm going to assume that was a yes. So Thank you, Sue, again. My name is Kate Dumichel. I'm in the Telecommunications Access Policy Division. And today I'm just going to give a high-level overview of the changes that were recently made to the E-rate program rules, as well as sort of a very quick what's required for E-rate, what's eligible, what are the opportunities. So the E-rate program is formally known as the Schools and Libraries Universal Service Support Mechanism, which provides support to schools and libraries across the nation to obtain affordable, high-speed broadband services and internal connections to connect students and library patrons with learning opportunities and services. On January 27th, the Federal Communications Commission unanimously approved an order, the number which is FCC 22-8, amending the definition of library in the E-rate program rules to include tribal library. This action was consistent with congressional action taken in 2018, as well as the Commission's definition of library in the Emergency Connectivity Fund program, which was adopted in 2021. By making this change, the order clarifies that tribal libraries are eligible for E-rate support, fixing a longstanding issue for a number of these libraries. The order also took steps on outreach and performance measures. The order directs the Wireline Competition Bureau and the Office of Native Affairs and Policy, working with the tribal liaison at the Universal Service Administrative Company, known as USAC, to promote awareness of the rule change and develop targeted outreach efforts and program training. It also adopted new metrics to help us gauge the participation of tribal libraries in the program and allow the Commission to see the impact. So we are now encouraging tribal libraries to seek funding from the E-rate program. Program rules require E-rate funding applications to be filed during the annual application filing window, which generally opens in January and closes in March each year before the start of the funding year. E-rate funding years run from July 1st through June 30th. So the annual E-rate application filing window is currently open and will remain open until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on March 22nd, 2022. This application filing window is for services and/or equipment to be used during funding year 2022, which runs from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. So people are applying now, schools and libraries are applying now for services that will run from this summer through next summer. The E-rate program is available to eligible schools or libraries. Elementary schools and secondary schools are defined in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, with a few caveats that for-profit schools are not eligible for support and schools with an endowment of $50 million or more are not eligible. Libraries must be eligible for support under Library Services and Technology Act, LSTA. Based on the new rule, a tribal library may be designated by a tribal council, for example, pursuant to a tribal resolution. And these tribal libraries should have 3 basic characteristics: regularly scheduled hours, staff, and materials available for library users. And one question that we've seen before is about the independent status of libraries. So libraries must be independent entities whose budgets are completely separate from any schools, including elementary schools, colleges, and universities. The E-rate program provides discounts on eligible services, and the eligible services are outlined in the program's annual eligible services list. Category 1 services are those services needed to support connectivity to the schools and libraries. So think about the broadband pipe to the building. This includes data transmission and internet access services. Category 2 services are the services needed to support connectivity within schools and libraries. So this is a wireless local access network or a Wi-Fi network. It includes, this category also includes internal connections, managed internal broadband services, and basic maintenance of internal connections. So some examples are listed here. Category 1 examples, the connections to the school or library, include lease-lit fiber, lease-dark fiber, Ethernet, cable modem. We also have people who apply for microwave point-to-point. In really rural, remote areas, it might be satellite. Some category 2 examples are wireless access points, switches, routers, the cabling, etc. So the E-rate program provides discounts, allowing eligible schools and libraries to receive universal service discounts for eligible equipment or services. The discounts range from 20 to 90% based on the level of poverty, which is based on the percentage of students eligible for the National School Lunch Program. And for libraries, that's based on the school district that the main library building is located in, urban or rural status. And there's a slight variation between category 1 or category 2 services. So as a very quick example, if a school or library was purchasing services that cost $1,000 a month, E-rate, and they were in a 90% discount rate, they would get 90% of that $1,000 paid for, and then they would have to pay the additional 10%. And then here you can see that there's a slight increase for schools and libraries that are in rural areas. And then there's a slight decrease for category 2 services to those schools and libraries with the highest discounts. So if you haven't applied for E-rate support in the past, there are a few steps that I wanted to highlight for if you want to get started and apply this funding year. All entities must have an FCC registration number issued by the FCC's Commission Registration System, which is known as CORS, to participate in the E-rate program. And if you have questions about creating an FCC registration number, or you think you may already have one, you can contact the CORS customer service team at 877-480-3201. USAC also assigns a unique identifying number to each entity that participates in the E-rate program, which is known as the Billed Entity Number, or often referred to as BEN. This number is assigned by USAC, and schools and libraries that are not registered in the E-rate Productivity Center, which is the electronic portal that is used for all of the applications for E-rate support, and do not have an entity number, will need to obtain one by contacting USAC's Customer Service Center. This will also start the process for access to EPIC as well. Before calling the Customer Service Center, it might be helpful to gather some of the information, which includes name, address, phone number. Some information, for instance, is the library an independent library? Is it part of a system? In the online system, the main branch of the library, the libraries are associated together as parents and children. So a library system would have a parent, and then all the branches would be children. But that's just sort of terminology. You just kind of want to know what buildings and which libraries you'll be seeking entity numbers for. And having an email address, the FCC registration number, and then the square footage of the library buildings, as well as whether the entity is the main branch in a library system. So in order to request E-rate support, the program requires competitive bidding. Applicants must seek competitive bids for eligible equipment and services by submitting an FCC Form 470 to USAC. USAC will post the FCC Form 470 on its public website, and service providers will use those to view the requests and submit responsive bids to applicants. Requests for bids, the FCC Form 470, must be posted for at least 28 days on USAC's website before an applicant can select and enter an agreement with a service provider. To comply with the 28-day waiting requirement, the FCC Form 470 will need to be submitted by February 22nd, 2022, in order to meet the deadline for the funding application, which is the FCC Form 471, by March 22nd, 2022, the last day of the filing window. Applicants must carefully consider all bids that are received and then select the most cost-effective service offering, using price as the primary factor in the bid selection. Other factors may be used in the bid evaluation process, but price of the eligible equipment and services must be weighted most heavily. After selecting their service providers, applicants then submit funding requests for the eligible equipment and/or services by filing the FCC Form 471, the funding application. And again, the deadline for those applications is March 22nd, 2022 for applications for funding year 2022. Applications are reviewed for compliance by USAC, and USAC may reach out to you for additional information regarding your funding applications during the review process. You will receive a funding commitment decision letter from USAC that will approve, modify, or deny your funding request. You may appeal USAC's funding decisions if you disagree with the decisions. After receiving the funding commitment decision letter, applicants receive the services or equipment and must pay their non-discounted share of the costs. This is the portion of the costs that the applicant must pay. For example, if you qualify for a 90% Category 1 discount rate, you are required to pay 10% of the costs of the eligible equipment or services, and the E-rate program will reimburse the remaining 90% of the costs. If the applicant pays the service provider 100% of the cost for this equipment or services, applicants may request reimbursement of the discounted share of the costs, 90%, for example, that was paid to the service provider using the FCC Form 472, which is known as the BEAR form, and submitting it to USAC. There's a separate option where applicants may pay the service provider only the non-discounted share. So in this 90% example, they would pay the service provider 10%, and the service provider may request reimbursement for the remaining 90% of the cost by using the FCC Form 474, which is known as the SPI form. Applicants may choose the invoicing method they prefer, BEAR or SPI, that is to be used on each funding request in the E-rate program. USAC has a tremendous amount of training materials and a frequent newsletter that comes out. So we wanted to highlight some of the resources that are available, including the E-rate travel training webpage. There's E-rate webinars, video tutorials, e-learning modules, document retention lists for applicants to be aware of, a link for how to subscribe to the E-rate news brief or the travel e-newsletter, which provides a lot of really useful information. And as well, this is also the email address for reaching out to Cranell Alfred. And then the phone number is also included for the E-rate Customer Service Center. And now I think we are going to see if anyone has questions.
So Kate, I noticed that one of the concerns raised in the chat had to do with the timing and it being enormously short for this coming application cycle. And we get it. You're right, there's not a lot of time. So basically, an interested party would need to initiate the competitive bidding process by February 22nd and submit their application by March 22nd to be timely filed for this application year. We have looked at granting waivers in the past and have done so, and it's not a super difficult process. It's making a filing with the FCC, explaining the circumstances for late submitting an application. So if there are folks that are really interested in participating for this coming year and the timing is just too tight, we encourage you to reach out to us and we can kind of work with you to see what we can do on that piece. And then Kate, it looks too like Cindy is interested in the links. And so I'm wondering if we can either add them to the chat or if we can send around the PowerPoint presentation, if that would be helpful.
So when we get the recording of this webinar, we will send it to everybody who registered with the PowerPoint slides, if that's okay with you. So
Yeah,
they'll get
that's
it in an email.
fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, we come from a rural area in Oklahoma, but what's the definition of rural and urban? So we're trying to find out if we apply, should we do it as a rural community or an urban community?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me see if Kate or Janae or Molly have an immediate answer to that. And otherwise, we can circle back on that piece, or even while we're on this chat.
I'm trying to pull it up, but I think I pulled up the wrong rule. So a school or library is urban if it's located in an urbanized area or urban cluster area with a population equal to or greater than 25,000, as determined by the most recent rural urban classification by the Bureau of Census. All other schools and libraries are rural. And I think this is another question where like the customer service center can help you by, using the exact address of the library.
And this is Johnny. I think there's also a urban rural tool lookup tool on USAC's website that we can send a link to, where I believe you just type in your address and then it tells you whether you're urban or rural. But there is also a tool on USAC's website that will help you make this determination too.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful. I guess I have another question. How widespread are service providers to help out with these initiatives?
Well, I think that, there are a number of, I'm sort of going through the chat as you're speaking, and it's definitely a concern around, how difficult it is to apply and what resources might be available. One resource we encourage you to check out would be the state E-rate coordinators. They can be a good resource. USAC, as Kate mentioned, has a number of different training tools, and we have a customer service line that can walk you through the process and what's required. I think, as someone just noted in the chat, I think the ability to draw on the service providers as a resource themselves sort of varies, provider by provider. But that would also be a good resource to tap into. And Kate, Janae, Molly, if I'm missing anything, please jump in with any additional thoughts or resources.
Another resource potentially might be if you have a school that's located near you that's participating in the E-rate program already, they might also be able to help with the 470 and the 471 too, and provide information about their experiences with service providers in that area. And also what you, rural healthcare clinics often participate in the RHC program, the rural healthcare program. And although the rules are a little bit different on the E-rate and RHC side, they do have very similar competitive bidding and application process. So for questions about who might have services in the area, service providers, a rural health clinic in your area may also be participating in the RHC program. And so they might be able to help with some of those questions about who are you receiving services for, and maybe even able to help a little bit with the competitive bidding aspect too, because in the RHC program, you also have to file a form and then wait 28 days before selecting your service provider. So there's a lot of similarities on the application and competitive bidding side between the rural healthcare program and the E-rate program. So those might also be local sources near you that might be able to help with some of these questions, especially about who they're receiving services from and their experiences with service providers in the area.
And I guess the final piece I would say around the timing is that, we are just getting started with this program, and we are invested over the long haul in making this easier for libraries and trying to encourage more and more tribal libraries to participate. So we appreciate your interest, and please know that we are going to continue to try and identify additional resources and help to make this as easy as possible. We know that it is not always an easy process. And, one of the ideas that we had is to try and identify some tribal libraries that have been successful with the E-rate program and see if they can offer some tips of the trade or advice about how others might apply. So we are in the process of trying to do that too. And we're very open to any ideas that this group has about things we can and should be doing.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nolan Bottle, and I work for the PO of Acoma and the Acoma Learning Center. I'm a tribal library here in Acoma, and we've been successful in the past several years receiving E-rate, and it's definitely come a long way, but still has them barriers and obstacles to overcome. And I seen in the chat that there was, in my question still to this day, and I've been here 15 years, and 15 years later, it's still the same question. Has the application process got easier or simpler for us to fill out? Because if you're not an expert on E-rate and the policies and regulations that are set in place, I mean, it's tough to follow and it's tough to apply. And I think that's where, being here in New Mexico, we have our NALCIC group, and out of the 16 tribal libraries, the biggest thing is it's too much paperwork, or it's a bear to take care of, or like I said, if you're not an expert in E-rate, the policies, I mean, it's just something that you don't want to deal with. And for my experience, And we had to hire a consultant to take care of this for us because we were successful in getting E-rate and getting broadband fiber to our library back in 2020. So we were fortunate to get funding of a little over $2 million to bring that to our library. But now the questions from FCC and USAC is, do we have this in place still? And we're just getting those questions or more information from us, and something that I didn't understand, and like, wow, so I think that's, advice to all the tribal libraries that are out there is that, I think and for FCC or USAC to help us better understand it, or what information you guys are looking for, what do we need to turn in, or make it simpler for us. Because if we didn't hire this consultant and she used to work at FCC, we wouldn't have got through this or through the paperwork that we had to go through to make this a successful application. So I'm willing to help out anyone that's, what we've been through the past 15 years that I've been here dealing with E-rate. So that's just my little comment there.
Thank you very, very much for that. And we will take that back and do some thinking. I mean, we know that resources, particularly on tribal lands, folks are really stretched thin and wear a lot of different hats, and that dedicating the resources needed to apply for E-rate funds requires a significant level of effort. So we will take that back. I really appreciate your being willing to help others and to offer that insight to us.
This is Anthony at IMLS. Sue, we'll continue to work together with the FCC. There may be some strategies where we might be able to provide some type of support. I think we just need to think this through a little bit more around what that might need to look like. But this has been very helpful. Nolan, thank you for your insight. I think that just understanding the challenges is really, really helpful.
I have another question. This is James writing in, by the way. I'm working with the Pawnee Nation. Approximately how many applications are funded each cycle?
So I think we get, maybe John, I can take this bill a little better, but we get like $3 billion worth of requests for discounts, that, and a little bit less than that based on modifications and cancellations gets funded. And I know, that's representing, I think it's like 100,000 schools and thousands of libraries each year.
I think they generally receive just under 40,000 funding applications every funding year. And so it's right around about 40,000 applications are received every E-rate funding year about.
Is there a average amount for the awards that's available, that information?
So it's all based on discounts on what the service costs in your area. So, it can vary a lot, right? Like an urban library system that has many branches might get a very large reward, just based on the number of services and that they're receiving. A smaller school or library might have a smaller amount, but it might increase based on if they're rural and the cost of service is higher in their area. So it's really just, it's based on the local costs and availability.
And there's no, I was just going to add, you didn't, there's no funding cap on the category 1 type services. So there's not a maximum amount you can request. On the category 2, which were like the switches and the routers and the cabling and basic maintenance, that's all based upon a 5-year budget that's determined by the size of the library, square footage, and then you're able to use your budgeted funds in the different ways you need to for getting your category 2 type services. But on the category 1, there's not like a maximum amount you can receive from the E-rate program or maximum size. It really is, as Kate mentioned, is based upon what the cost is for those services in your area. And then just ensuring that you did a competitive bid and selected the most cost-effective offering. If you had multiple choices to choose from, sometimes you may only receive one bid, and that would be, the services you would be used because that was the only bid you received in that area.
And can libraries apply year after year?
Yeah, so you do need to, I saw that question in the chat, you do need to request the discounts, the funding each year. It is possible, however, to competitively bid for a multi-year contract, to say like, we want services for 5 years. And you only have to do that competitive bidding process once, but you do have to submit the request for the discounts each year, each of the 5 years for the contract. I see another question in the chat about tribal colleges and universities. So this action in January didn't change the commission's rules about eligible schools and libraries. So schools are defined as elementary and secondary schools under the ESEA. And I think in the ECF program, we similarly got questions about libraries at tribal colleges. And again, there's a rule, and this was adopted back at the very start of the program, that says that the library's budget has to be completely separate from a school's budget. So that includes colleges or universities. So it wouldn't, the program doesn't currently fund colleges or universities. I see there's also a question about, does the rule make any changes for current recipients? So if you're a tribal library who's already been participating, which that was always possible, right? There were ways for tribal libraries to participate as well. This is just designed to make it a little easier for some of the ones who weren't able to or had sort of issues just determining eligibility at the early days of the program. So the rule change is really to sort of encourage tribal libraries who have not been participating to participate in the E-rate program and get funding.
I had a quick question about state library support. What is their role in helping tribal libraries access E-rate funding?
Well, so I think we hope that they will continue to be a resource for tribal libraries. Our understanding is that some of the support, varies a little bit depending on, state by state or jurisdiction by jurisdiction. I mean, one thing we want to make clear through our rule change is that tribal libraries do not need to go to the State Library Association in order to be eligible for E-rate support. So as Kate walked through, there's sort of three different ways of, which there's three different things that tribal libraries need to show in order to get support, and it is not predicated upon going to the state library agency, although that would be an option as well.
Because state libraries, most of them, I think, have E-rate advisors or coordinators that are wonderful resources. So if you're a tribal library, do consider contacting your state library for assistance, and hopefully they'll be able to help.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion.
Thanks, Susan. This is Nancy Weiss from Institute of Museum and Library Services. And I think Marika, one of the participants, did put the contact for the State Library Administrative Agency E-rate coordinators.
Wonderful.
Well, we're happy to answer any additional questions that folks have now, or as new questions come up, we're happy to be a resource too. We can make sure that Susan and Melissa have our contact information, and you're welcome to reach out to us directly or contact USAC as well. And just please know that we are so grateful and appreciative for this opportunity and look forward to being in this together with you all over the long haul.
Good afternoon, Sue.
Hello.
Yes, this is Kevin Schindel with the Pueblo Famous Department of Education. I had another engagement, so I got on the call a little late, but I just wanted to see, is this E-rate opportunity just funding connectivity, or is it also possible to fund building our own tribal networks for tribes?
So that's an excellent question. The funding, we do provide E-rate funding for special construction if there is no existing service option. And maybe I defer to Kate or Janae if they want to add any more detail around that. It's a more challenging lift, but we definitely provide funding for connectivity where there is none.
Yeah, and I think Kevin had also messaged me that Pueblo of Jimenez in New Mexico is one of the areas where they've done a self-provision fiber network. So I think he's asking more, there's more sort of nuance when it comes to the services that might be provided on the fiber that don't go to schools and libraries. And I don't want to get it wrong. I think we have like a fair share policy about what gets paid when you build a network that might get used by other entities. But I think we might have to ask you to give us, maybe we can do like a one-on-one on that, because I think that one we probably need to know what you're thinking, and or USAC, you could reach out to USAC about it too, because I think there's like a lot of requirements, but I don't want to get it wrong.
Thank you, Kate. I just no, the reason I asked the question is just so that I know that some tribes in rural areas, there may not be providers that may have the capacity, or there may be difficulties in relationships with the tribes. So just having the tribal libraries that are participating today understand that if there is an option to go in and build your own network, which again it's more of a heavy lift than just getting connectivity funded through existing providers, that could be an option, whether a tribe or a consortium of tribal entities like tribal libraries and local schools that are E-rate eligible could come together on a project. So that's why I just wanted to
Yeah, thank you.
ask that question so that if that opportunity does exist, so that the tribes and the tribal libraries on the call can determine whether going through a service provider may be the best fit, or maybe partnering with other tribal libraries and entities that are E-rate eligible to bring content.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I probably was not emphasizing enough that it is a real opportunity, even in places that don't have service, or if there is service, but it's just not adequate for the libraries. Marika Weiser also put something in the chat. It was called Built by E-rate. It was like a case study of a number of tribal libraries coming together to build a fiber network and all of the sort of steps they took to do it, and using E-rate support. And I think there was some matching funds in there to get it done. And it's a game changer when you can get in there and connect places that just haven't been able to get real broadband access before.
Sue, I don't know if you're ready. I know you were talking about answering some of the questions that people had submitted with their registration. Do you think it's a good time to do that now?
Sure. I was just scanning them earlier, and I think we've covered quite a bit of ground. They related to what do you need to do to submit an application? Are there any resources or help for us around that? And I think we've covered it, and we'll follow up with some additional links in our presentation. Concerns about timing, which we are aware of. We talked a bit about what the eligible services are. But Kate and Johnny, keep me honest in case there was anything that came in that I missed that we can cover here. All right, then I'm going to give myself credit for hopefully covered at least most of our bases. And I noticed that Cornell just put into the chat the checklist that we put together with USAC about, steps that you need to take in order to.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so anything else?
I don't think there's anything at our end other than a huge thanks to you, to Susan, to the folks at ATELM, and for all of you that are participating. We really appreciate the excellent feedback and your time, and look forward to working with you. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, and Kate, and the rest of the folks at FCC for your presentation and for educating us on what's possible here. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you all. And we will make sure to send you a copy of the PowerPoint as well as the recording. And we'll kind of put together some of these links that were posted in the chat so that you can reference those as well. Susan, anything I'm missing?
Maybe we should remind everybody about the digital inclusion workshop that's coming up in May.
Yes, absolutely. I will actually drop the link to that if you want to mention it.
Gosh, I can't even remember the dates. I'm so sorry. I thought we were
No, you're fine. So it's so May 3rd through 4th, from 1 to 5 Eastern, we will have our digital inclusion workshop, and I'm going to paste the registration link. It's a free workshop.
The first day is about digital inclusion programs and things that might benefit your community. including using digital navigators. And then the next day is about cases. So we 2 days of training. It's completely free, and do register. We hope to see you there. And with that, we'll sign off and say thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, FCC. Thank you, IMLS. This is a great opportunity. I know that the timing is short, but it's doable. And even now we can start planning for next year if this year isn't doable, because it's a wonderful benefit for your community. So with that, I'll say bye and turn it over to Sue to finish up.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. Let us know if you have any other questions. Take care.